But let me be very brutal and frank to you all. Corruption must stop.
In another case, I was reporting corruption in the Philippines. $900 million worth of money that should have gone to fight poverty in the Philippines instead went to a corrupt man, Lucio Tan, who was in default on his loans.
But let me be very brutal and frank to you all. Corruption must stop now. And I would address to all Filipinos who want to do something for your country and never had the opportunity because walang yung nagyayaya sa inyo. Ngayon na ninyo gawin kasi ako na. Ayaw ko talaga ng corruption. It makes me sick.
Here's medieval England. And in medieval England, society was organized under the feudal system. At the bottom were the peasants. They farmed land that they had rented from the barons.
I hate rent. No money.
The barons were wealthy because they'd done a favor for the king, who'd given them land as a reward. At the top was the king. He owned everything in the kingdom and could do as he pleased, including making people pay tax.
I hate
It's so unfair.
A king's power was based on the belief, supported by the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury, that God himself had made the king the king.
How splendid is that? Let's start at the beginning and see what all the fuss has been about.
We have been cooling our heels here at Runnymede these 3 days. What if this meeting is a trick, and the king is planning an ambush? If that be the case, he will find us ready to answer in kind. Sire, you've had ample time to review the charter.
I have.
And you will keep your word and affix the royal seal?
And if I do not?
Tomorrow, England will be without a king.
Signing will no doubt kill me as well as your blade, sir. But I'll do it.
On June 15th, almost 800 years ago, a band of English barons gathered on the banks of the Thames to confront King John. The same King John, by the way, who had all that trouble with Robin Hood. They were sick of being taxed for the king's military campaigns to reclaim land he lost in a family feud, which wasn't really going all that well anyway. They demanded that the king sign a document that limited royal power and set in place 3 cornerstones of liberty: the rule of law, representative government, and trial by jury. That document became known as Magna Carta, which is Latin for Great Charter.
No free man shall be taken, imprisoned, or in any other way destroyed, except by the lawful judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land. To no one will we sell, to none will we deny or delay right or justice.
At Runnymede, your rights were won at Runnymede. No free man shall be fined or bound, or dispossessed of freehold ground, except by lawful judgment found and passed upon him by his peers. Forget not.
This Magna Carta was entered into the statute rolls as English law, which meant that if a king wanted to change it, he had to get it approved by Parliament.
What's the big deal about Magna Carta anyway?
Well, in England, Magna Carta was the first step towards building a fair society where everyone has equal rights and nobody is more powerful than the law. This is the root of our legal system and government. Magna Carta and the English legal system became a model for other countries, including the USA.
Thank you, Magna Carta.
Australia.
Thanks a lot, Magna Carta.
New Zealand.
Cheers, Magna Carta.
Canada.
Thanks, Magna Carta.
And India.
Thanks, Magna Carta.
To name just a few. In fact, if our calculations are correct, 1/4 of the people in the world live in a country where the system of government was inspired by Magna Carta. And Magna Carta has inspired the idea that all humans everywhere deserve equal rights and freedom.
Gentlemen, there is no longer any ground for hope. If we wish to be free, if we wish to preserve inviolate those inestimable privileges which belong to us as free men, Aye. If we mean not basely to abandon the noble struggle in which we have been so long engaged, in which we have pledged ourselves never to abandon until the glorious object of our struggle be obtained, then we must fight. I repeat it, sir. We must fight! Stay appeal to arms and to the God of hosts is all we have left us.
Arms, Mr. Henry! What arms? We are weak, sir!
They tell us, sir, that we are weak, unable to cope with so powerful an adversary. But when shall we be stronger? Will it be the next week? Or the next year? Will it be when we are totally disarmed and a British Guard shall be stationed in every house? Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs, hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemy hath bound us hand and foot? Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means the God of nature hath placed in our power. 3 millions of people, armed in the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country that which we possess, are invincible by any force our enemy can send against us. Besides, sir, we shall not fight our battles alone. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sirs, we have no election. Should we be base enough to desire it, it is now already too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery. Our chains are forged, their clanking may be heard upon the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat it, sir, let it come!
Mr. Henry, we speak for peace, sir!
It is in vain to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that blows from the north shall bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that they wish? What would they have? Is life so dear? Or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God! I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
To arms, Mr. Henry!
Indeed, and I wish I could report to you that progress is being made, but we cannot seem to agree on anything, except it seems for the value of trial by jury. I must get back inside before Madison gives too much power to the states.
The abuses of the past were front and center, and when we came together to write the National Constitution, we knew we needed to ensure that arbitrary and unchecked power wouldn't be the norm in our young country. We believed that the combination of an independent judiciary and the right to be tried by a jury of our peers would protect us from whatever form tyranny might take. You see, judicial independence protects judges from outside pressures so they can make unbiased decisions. Without it, judges wouldn't be able to uphold the rule of law, the idea that the law, not any person, rules supreme. In England, Magna Carta finally made the king subject to the law. In our country, the Constitution rules supreme.
The institution of the trial by jury has been sanctified by the experience of the ages. It has been recognized by the Constitution of every state in the Union. It is deemed the birthright of Americans, and it is deemed that liberty cannot subsist without it.
Many of those who gathered to draft the Constitution were lawyers, so we naturally turned to the legal system we knew and admired, English common law. This shared heritage is most apparent in our Bill of Rights, which was written in 1791, when the first Congress met. You might say the Bill of Rights was a bit of a compromise. when the first Congress met, 4 of the states still had not ratified the Constitution and said they would not unless certain rights were added. 3 of the new amendments addressed the right to trial by jury. The Fifth Amendment guarantees no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The Sixth Amendment guarantees in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. And the Seventh Amendment extends the right to trial by jury to civil cases. But let's return to the present and see what 2 Supreme Court justices have to say on the subject of juries.
When our Constitution was formed in the 1700s, there was no clear understanding of what the framers were going to come up with when they started writing our Constitution, with one exception. They were absolutely clear in their minds that we wanted to provide for trial by jury. That was a given.
The framers of our Constitution felt so strongly about trial by jury that they put it in the Constitution. They put it in the Bill of Rights. It applies to criminal trials, to all criminal trials. It applies to many civil trials. They regarded it as one of the most important safeguards of democracy. I think to their minds it was as important as the right to vote. Jurors really are experts, more than we judges are, on the thing that we ask juries to do, and that is to make findings of fact.
We don't take just retired people or people who have time on their hands. We want the whole community represented. We want people who are people engaged in their ordinary work but who take time off to hear a case, as well as others. We want a full sampling of the community because that's who we are entrusting our lives and our honor and our most important issues.
What we ask jurors to do are things that they're really experts on. They are more expert than we judges are in judging ordinary human behavior. Just because they are living in the community and they meet all sorts of people and they find themselves in a great variety of situations. And so our legal system is based on the idea that they can hear a witness testify and make a good judgment about whether that witness is telling the truth or whether the witness really remembers.
By including a broad spectrum of the community in the jury pool, we're assured of a broader perspective in the jury that actually sits on the case.
Let's say I'm a doctor. I'm very busy and I'm called for jury duty. I may not want to go. But if I'm sued as a doctor, I would probably like to have somebody like me serving on the jury. Or, maybe I'm an interstate truck driver. I'm away from home a lot. I'm on the road. Serving on a jury is a big inconvenience for me. But I could well be a party to a case. And wouldn't I want somebody like me to be on the jury? Not necessarily a doctor or a truck driver, but somebody like me in some sense. So it is very important for people from all walks of life, no matter how busy they are, to report for jury duty along with everybody else.
After the Second World War, the United Nations decided to do something to protect the rights of everyone on the planet. Eleanor Roosevelt and her team wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was approved in December 1948. She described it as
a Magna Carta for all mankind.
After that, countries around the world made their own laws to protect human rights.
Is that where the story ends?
Not by a long shot. Magna Carta was only the first stepping stone on our journey to a fair and just society. Over the past 8 centuries, all sorts of people all over the world have been inspired by Magna Carta to live lives, make laws, build countries that celebrate the idea that everyone is equal under the law. It's a remarkable legacy that's been passed on to us. We are all responsible for making our society fairer and more just. We are all responsible for protecting human rights. And now that you know the story of Magna Carta, it's your responsibility too.
Mga ungpin na mayaman, impluensya, pag kung sinong administrasyon, lapitan lang. Ungpin, binigyan siya ng konsesyon ni Cory. Since then, until now, 1% lang. Everybody is paying 10% of their growth. Yan yung mga oligarchs. Yun yung mga mayaman na mga putang ina wala ng ginawa, mag-upo lang tapos gabitin yung impluensya. Yang inquirer, I don't know, but meron akong natanggap na balita na may binili ng lupa yan sa gobyerno, ang binayaran lang sweetheart deal dahil nga they went for Cory during kalaban nila sa Marcos. May lupa yan na halos ibinigay lang sa inquirer. It's an alley in Makati. Marami ng mga mall-mall dyan na maliit, pero yan ay kalkaling ko yan. Hindi lang yan, yung mga mayaman na, kaya sabi ko, itong Pilipinas, ito para lang sa mga taong naghirap. Kayo ang protektahan ko. Yung mga mayaman, talagang kalaban ko yan. Sabihin na ninyo na inggit ako sa inyo, totoo yan, putang ina kayo, pero magbayad kayo. Kaya inggit ako ng galit sa inyo. Bakit hindi ako mainggit? Yumayaman kayo ng yumayaman, hindi naman kayo bumabayad ng taxes. Itong inquirer, as if yung mga editorial nila, kung birahin nila yung mga opisyal, so, right with all the righteousness and morality sa editorial, yung pala putang ina, kayo pati yung ABS, mukhang pera kayo. Oh, ako lang rin makasabi ng, minura ko si Obama, kayo pa. Kaya kayong mga yayaman na yung mga tax evasion ninyo, magbayad kayo. Kaya si Lucio Tan, halos to the last day ng kampanya, habol ng habol sa akin yan. Kasi gusto magbigay ng pera. Sabi ko. Yung si Mega World, sabi ko, hindi ko tumatanggap. Ayaw ko. Kaya naman nanalo ako 6 million. Kaya nga, saan ko kinuha yung 6 million? Hindi naman ninyo ako kilala. Bakit binoto niya ako? Why? Messaging. Alam naman niya. Alam ko. Kaya nandito kayo kasi talagang mahirap lang tayo. Our country never grew talaga. But in the fullness of God's time, sigurado ako, basta wala lang korupsyon at makuha ko yung lahat ng taxes na hindi mo bayad itong mga animal na to. Lucio Tan has almost 30 billion. He has to pay. He has to pay. Lahat, he has to pay. Kami gobyerno, tax at source kami. So, ang guarantee ko sa inyo, tabla tayo lang. Walang espesyal. Walang Moro, walang Tausog, walang Bisaya, walang Ilocos. Basta tabla tayo. Lahat.
Having average citizens make these kinds of decisions? It's about we the people. We are the governors of our own nation, and we are the ones who are given the opportunity through jury service to sort of live those constitutional values. Most of us go about living our lives without really thinking about the Constitution, but on jury service you get to live it. Those principles of participation, deliberation, fairness, equality, the rule of law, they're all there in jury service, and so it is a concrete opportunity for ordinary citizens to live the principles of the Constitution.
Jury service is one of our most important civic duties. The Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states, "In all criminal prosecutions, the accused should enjoy the right of a speedy and impartial trial by a jury of the state and district of where the crime has been committed." In other words, any person accused of a crime punishable by law has a constitutional right to a trial by jury. The Seventh Amendment provides a similar right to trial for litigants in a civil lawsuit. So, how are jurors selected? If you are at least 18 years of age and a U.S. citizen, you could be summoned for jury service. Jurors are essential. They listen to testimony, review evidence, and render a decision in a civil or criminal trial. There are two types of juries, grand and petit. A grand jury determines if there's probable cause or enough evidence to charge a person with a crime. It consists of 16 to 23 people, and proceedings are not open to the public. A petit jury, which you're probably more familiar with, is also called a trial jury. It consists of 6 to 12 jurors who examine the facts and render a guilty or not guilty verdict in a criminal trial. Before a jury is selected, the court and counsel will question potential jurors to ensure an impartial jury, as required by the Constitution. This preliminary examination is known as voir dire. If a juror is biased, counsel can ask the judge to dismiss that person for cause. There are also what are called peremptory challenges. In some criminal cases, this allows counsel to excuse a limited number of potential jurors without stating cause if the attorney believes a juror will not serve the best interests of their client, but a juror cannot be excused based on race or sex. In some cases, alternate jurors are selected to take the place of jurors who may become ill during the trial. Alternate jurors hear the evidence just as other jurors, but they don't participate in the deliberation unless officially replaced. Before the trial begins, the judge or the jurors will select who will serve as a foreperson. This person diffuses arguments, ensures each juror has a fair say, and addresses any necessary correspondence or questions to the judge. During the trial, jurors will hear opening statements from both parties on the reasons they are in court, testimony of witnesses, and evidence introduced, and finally, closing arguments. Throughout the trial, proper juror conduct is essential in order to be fair on all sides. In other words, jurors must not discuss the case and keep away from media, including social media. At the end of the trial, the judge will provide the jury with instructions and the final verdict is achieved. Unlike what we see on TV, rarely is there a hung jury or a jury that cannot come to a decision. If a jury is deadlocked and cannot reach a verdict, the judge will declare a mistrial and a new trial may take place. Jury service is a fundamental right guaranteed to all U.S. citizens. It is a civic responsibility that connects all of us, and it is one of the very important aspects of our democracy.
Hello, I'm Chris Thomas with the United States Courts. In this edition of Court Shorts, we focus on jury service. Every year, some local federal courts host the National Open Doors to Federal Courts Outreach Program. This program introduces high school students and their teachers to jury service, the most direct way of participating in our democracy. In this broadcast, students question federal judges from across the country on the basics of jury service. Let's hear what they have to say.
Why is jury service important?
Thomas Jefferson said that one of the three bedrocks of freedom in this country were freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and the right to trial by jury. So jury service is not something that's been important because it's been around for a very short period of time. It's part of the foundation of our American system.
Juries are the purest form of democracy that we have in this country. Every week in courthouses around the country, 6 to 12 people will sit and bring a particular statute to life, bring the Constitution to life, and give it meaning.
Without the jury, our whole judicial system as we know it falls apart. The jury is really the most important person in the courtroom when there is a trial.
What is the role of the jury?
They make the decision. The judge is the referee and makes sure that they understand the rules, just like people who play in a game have to understand the rules. The judge gives them the rules and then they make the decision.
We like to say that a lawsuit has two parts. There's the facts and the law. I'm the judge of the law, and the jurors are the judge of the facts.
They decide who to believe and who not to believe. I give them instructions on what law to apply to those decisions, but the jury uniquely decides what the facts are of the case, and then they apply the facts to the law as I give it to them.
How long will I have to sit on a jury?
Most trials only take 1 or 2 days.
You serve from 9 to 5. We take an hour for lunch. We take a 15-minute recess in the morning, a 15-minute recess in the afternoon.
We strive every week to make sure that when a citizen comes to our courthouse to serve as a juror, that we use their time wisely.
Is it worth my time if I wait in the jury assembly room but don't serve?
We need a pool from which to select the jury. Those names are drawn then randomly, and they go to the courtroom. Even some of the ones that go to the courtroom aren't selected for the actual jury. But without them being there, without the lawyers having the ability to pick the ones that they believe will be the fairest in their case, the whole system falls apart.
Having the jury in the room, and maybe the defendant or the plaintiff hearing for the first time the case coming together in a certain way, sometimes will facilitate a settlement. So even if a jury doesn't hear a case to conclusion, they have contributed to solving the dispute between the parties.
Is it important for the jury to be diverse?
The goal of a jury is to have a cross-section of the community. And so if people aren't willing to serve, then only those who don't have a good excuse not to serve are the ones that will end up on the jury. And that's not a good cross-section. We want everyone to be there, everyone to have their voice in the way our justice system works.
I just think it's amazing that you can get 12 people from different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, different life experiences, who usually can come to an agreement.
Do you always agree with the verdicts?
When a very diverse jury, both ethnically, gender, and geographically, they agree unanimously, you have great confidence in their decision-making.
When you have 12 people making a decision, they're more likely to get it right. If just one person makes a decision, they might not think of all the angles. And having a jury and their ability to discuss it with one another, they can really talk through the evidence and reach the correct decision.
Have you ever served on a jury?
I've been called for jury service about 6 times, and every single time I show up, so I know the pressures and responsibilities of jurors.
I think it's important that if I'm going to demand that other people serve as jurors, that I be willing to serve also.
Why should I serve on a jury?
Jurors invariably say to me afterwards, Judge, I didn't realize that it could be so interesting and really fun at times.
I have never talked to anybody that has served on a jury, no matter how apprehensive they were before, that didn't love and value their experience after they had it.
I think it's a privilege to be able to participate in this system that we have had for over 200 years.
They walk away feeling that they are greater citizens and better members of our citizenry for doing that.
In today's world, we talk a lot about patriotism. I think jurors who serve on jury duty are being very patriotic. They're doing a role that the Constitution asks them to do.
Corruption case would have never even gone to trial if it hadn't been for a group of citizens, the grand jury, who indicted him. 7 Action News investigator Heather Cataldo takes us inside a system that's cloaked in secrecy, but has changed the shape of Detroit's political landscape.
23 people, regular people like you and me, serving on a grand jury. They come together in secret inside this room, and their decisions can shape a life, a city, or even a nation.
Before a verdict, Kwame Kilpatrick guilty on 24 different charges, including racketeering conspiracy. Before a trial, did Mr. Cato give you cash? The massive corruption case against Kwame Kilpatrick started behind these closed doors. A federal grand jury spent 2.5 years sitting in these chairs, listening to hundreds of witnesses and examining mountains of evidence. The grand jury system is completely secret, and it's a vital step in a federal criminal case. Instead of a prosecutor filing charges against someone like in state court, here inside this building, the federal district court, a panel of 23 citizens makes that crucial first decision on whether to charge someone with a felony.
You have someone's life in your hands.
and you had better make sure.
Jill recently served on a grand jury in Detroit. Because of grand jury secrecy laws, she can't tell us which cases she heard. Jill says when she got that summons in the mail, she had no idea that she was about to play such a key role in democracy.
My first thing was, how do I get out of this? I don't want to commit myself to something else. But I'm so glad I was chosen to do it.
Unlike a trial jury, which usually reports for duty every day, grand jurors typically meet once a week for 18 months.
The prosecutors are over here, and the witness is over here.
U.S. District Court Chief Judge Gerald Rosen took us inside a grand jury room where so many of Detroit's high-profile cases started.
You'll notice there's no table for defense counsel because defense counsel are not permitted in the grand jury room. It's strictly a proceeding in which the government presents evidence to the citizenry.
The foreperson and deputy foreperson sit in the front of the room while the rest of the grand jurors fill these seats. They are not determining guilt or innocence. Their only job is to see if there's enough probable cause for an indictment.
The grand jury process reflects who we are as a people and our values. It reflects, going back to the revolution, our distrust of government overreaching.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about the grand jury system?
I think the biggest misconception is that the grand jury is just a rubber stamp for the prosecution.
Defense lawyers say grand juries only hear one side of the story because there's no chance at all for the targets of the investigation to present their own evidence.
What people don't see along the way is the involvement of the grand jury in the process itself, bringing in more witnesses, not charging on some charges that the government is urging.
Judge Rosen says when a grand jury uncovers more misconduct, they can direct federal agents and prosecutors to keep investigating. That's why the term of the Detroit corruption case special grand jury was extended 2 times for a total of 2.5 years.
I was so humbled when I discharged them. I heard story after story after story about how, although there were hardships for them and for their family, that they believed that they had to see this through, that it was the most important thing they had done.
Usually, just the foreperson returns the indictment to a magistrate. But Judge Rosen says the Kilpatrick corruption grand jurors were so committed, all 23 of them went into the courtroom to hand down the indictment against the former mayor and his co-defendants.
Because they wanted to show how unified they were and how committed they were to their product. Very unusual. I don't know of any other time when that's happened.
Judge Rosen says the citizens of this region should be very grateful for the work those grand jurors did. As for this grand juror, she's just grateful she was chosen to make a difference.
We have the power to change things.
The judge says grand juries have to stay secret in order to protect both witnesses and potential targets of an investigation. If a grand jury decides there isn't enough evidence to charge someone, making the investigation public could have terrible consequences on someone's reputation.
And it seems that eternally, the president or whoever sits there by the passing, pati ako na. Kasali na rin ako dyan kasi nandito na ako. Corruption is a very virulent thing that is almost hard to stop because ang ating constitution was really crafted to allow accountability to escape.